milk and the honey, but you forget to know. Thinking of all of the one that flows. Yeah, I pretend I'm not jealous, trying to keep my cool. Never resting my eyes, no, I'm watching your every move. I watch every move. Wanna be somebody too.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Interview with a Schizophrenic. I'm your host, Duncan Samrasinger, and today I have the great pleasure of having Jen with me. She is from Michigan in the United States of America. She's in her early 30s and has a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder, depressive type, as well as anxiety. So hello, Jen. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's absolutely my pleasure. So, Jen, what I want to talk about is I would like if you could give the listeners an understanding of how your mental health journey began, how you got your diagnosis, did you go into hospital? So, if you'd like to talk about that, that would be fantastic.
Sure. Well, I started having symptoms when I was pretty young, like as a child. I would see things and hear things, but I lived with my grandparents, and my grandmother kind of explained it away as either my imagination or the quote ghost that lives in her house. She had a cute little name for him. So
Oh, really?
anything odd thing, she kind of calmed me down with, "Oh, it's just Henry. It's okay." So I know it sounds really silly, but it actually did help as a child because you're like, okay, this is okay. So I could be a little less scared. But, it was not quite as intense as it got as I started getting older. Um,
Yeah. So,
I,
so hold on a second. What
sure.
did you saw things when you were a child?
Yeah, I would see like shadow people is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
And, I'd look out my window and someone would be waving at me and I'd, hear
Mm,
whispers. So,
okay.
it was easy for grandma to say, "Oh, that's a ghost."
Yeah. Maybe it was.
I mean, yeah.
But no.
Anytime something weird
No,
happens in our house,
I
we
don't know.
always get
Yeah, I
wondering.
mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, it does obviously when you have a diagnosis as an adult, it does link in because I also, as a child, I would say when I got to about the age of 15 or 16, my mind was full of chatter, and it's only
Mhm.
looking back now that I think it was accumulation of hearing voices, which I never really understood as a child. Um, so I think when you get older, you look back and you think you can recognize what was happening. Um, so yeah, so carry on.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So as I got older, obviously things got a little more intense. But unfortunately, the
Yeah,
background I come from is a bit old-fashioned, conservative kind of background. So you just pretend everything's fine all the time. So no matter what's happening to you, everything's fine, which is why, you
mm,
know, we're having this very serious conversation, and I'll still like laugh from time to time because that's just how my family deals with things. Everything's fine, wonderful. People are having a grand old time at funerals, which I've always thought is kind of messed up. But yeah, so
mm,
um when and it got to the point as a teenager that I was hospitalized because I did attempt suicide unsuccessfully, obviously.
I'm sorry.
But it's okay. Um but again, that was another thing that was just kind of brushed away like, "Oh, it was just a momentary thing. Don't worry about it." My They didn't really want to do anything psychological because it wasn't that. It was just I was a teenager. And that was kind of their
Yes.
reasoning. So I to get around, the lack of that kind of stuff, I just ended up trying to busy myself, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yep. Yep.
I would have like three screens on my computer going and then a video game going at the same time, and I'd have headphones listening to music and talking to friends all at the same time, which I guess kind of helped develop skills of multitasking, but it was just kind of a way to try and
Yeah.
like keep myself distracted from what I was hearing and seeing. Um, and
Okay.
then uh, I got out of there as soon as I graduated high school. I moved up to Michigan. I was originally from more of a southern area, and I moved up to Michigan. I had a friend here, so I came here,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, I instead of seeking help like the real normal way, I just became a bit of a party girl and just drank a lot, which,
Yeah.
yep. I
Hmm.
was a waitress, and then I would just drink. So, wait,
Yeah,
not,
I've been there as well when I was in my 20s.
yeah,
So
I think it's common for people in our situation to just kind of be like, oh, I can take
yeah.
care of this. I'll just self medicate. Spoiler alert, that's not, if for any younger people listening, that's not the answer.
Yeah.
um, it wasn't until I eventually stopped that lifestyle. I met a quite wonderful person who's now my husband, who's very
Yeah.
supportive. And the only time I drink now is socially with my sister-in-law, and that's like, a glass of something, not. Um,
That's
but
nice, though. I think that's nice.
thank you. Yeah, he's pretty cool, I guess. um, but it wasn't, and so up here we have we're a bit of a misfit group of friends that I have. And we have two
Mm,
people who are a bit older than us. They're about 10 years older than I am. And we call ourselves a little, like, we're a little family because we all kind of have,
yeah.
like, I have problems with my family. I don't really talk to them as much. And when I do, we don't get along. Um, so my
Yeah.
quote unquote parents up here recognize something has been wrong. Like, they could kind of tell. And so uh, they kind of was like, okay, I think we should talk about this, and I think we should see someone. And I was very against it because, again, I pretend like everything's wrong, everything's funny. I'll just hide everything with humor. Um, but they were able to kind of see past that and be like, no, we're going to take you somewhere. And I will, the quote unquote dad of our group, he was like, I will go with you. So for my
Yeah.
first quite a few sessions, he went with me, and that's where everything kind of came out. And uh, I got the diagnosis that I have now. And that was a couple years
Okay.
ago. So,
Okay. I mean, that's kind of. I hear some people say they got diagnosed when they're like 17. More people get diagnosed in their 20s. There are some people who get diagnosed in their late 30s. But, so I guess I guess probably it's probably slightly late. I mean, you're probably suffering for quite a long time without being treated. How was the treatment for you? Was it effective?
it was. Uh, I did another terrible joke. I say I'm on a cocktail, but that cocktail took quite a long time to iron out, and I know that during that time there was some issues. I'm very, again, fortunate from my friends who are very understanding of that. When I'm like, I can't right now, I'm sorry, or they just check on and be like, hey, you haven't said anything in a while, what's going on? And I also, my work is
Mm,
very understanding of mental issues. My boss has a daughter who's
mm,
in a similar situation, so when I'm like, I'm going into the server room, I just need to do this, it was okay for me to do that. And
mm,
not everyone has that, which is terrible. But it took a lot of time to get the medications right, and for the most part, they're pretty good
mm.
now. Sometimes have to adjust a little bit, but there was there was a pill I was on called Geodon, and
Yes. Yeah.
that one messed me up. I know it's good for a lot of people, but it was a really dark time where I
Mm,
tend to self harm, unfortunately, which I haven't in a while. But Geodon brought me back to that space, and then, it's
okay.
pretty embarrassing, I would say. And for it felt, well, I shouldn't say it is. It's not, but it felt embarrassing for a woman of my age to have her husband hide things from her so she wouldn't cut herself. So,
Okay. Okay. Fine. I mean, it's not an easy thing what you're going through. Um, it is a severe condition. So you're always going to have ups and downs. There's always going to be times in
yeah.
your life where it's going to be difficult because it is a battle. Um, so I don't think there's no shame if you Do you know what I mean? It's a battle. It's a daily battle. So
Yeah.
sometimes you win. Sometimes it gets difficult. That's what I would say. So well, you said something interesting to me earlier. What is your occupation?
I work in IT, so like a systems administrator.
I also work in IT. That's why I found it interesting.
That is
Yeah. So
awesome.
did you have a break in your career, or did you carry on working since adulthood?
No, I've had a couple breaks. Uh,
Yeah.
I didn't get into IT until a little later than probably most. I was in my mid 20s, but like my early
Yeah.
20s, I just kind of did whatever, you know. And I did have a break
Mm,
after the job I had previous to this was not the best environment. Not to get on like a soapbox or anything, but as a woman in IT, sometimes it's not the easiest position to be in over here in my neck of the woods. Uh, so I was in a place that was, it kind of felt like it was ran by frat boys, like tossing around footballs and
mm.
things like that. And my voice was very unheard in that kind of environment, simply because I was the only woman who worked there. So that
I
was
mean
I
that
got.
that kind of I'm just
Go
saying
ahead. I'm
that kind of
sorry.
environment in 2010 onwards, or even in the last 20 years, it's kind of it shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
We've do you know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
ridiculous, and you're absolutely right to reject that.
I agree
I mean, I also
completely.
say the occupation of IT is office based, so sometimes it can be toxic, but so I guess sometimes what I find is the people who work in IT, they're not as they might not understand people as well as other people do.
That's very true.
Um, yeah, but that's interesting. You work in IT, so you've got a kind of logical brain, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that actually helped me. I shouldn't say it helps with my condition, but I think it does, because after the fact, I'm able to go back and be like, okay, here's why you were wrong in your mind, like, or the voices are wrong. Let's think
Yeah,
about this. And it's something my therapist and I have worked with a lot, is trying to use the rational part of my brain when the unrational part is taking over and kind of beating me down.
yeah, definitely. I think logic helps if you have in a delusion, you can kind of logic your way out of it.
Yeah.
You can say, well, I think there's bugs in my bedroom, but where exactly are they? And you could, and where's the power supply? Is there? Are they being transmitted out to a van? I mean, you can kind of work out holes in the delusion, um, which I think can help as well.
Yeah, that's exactly kind
Okay,
of what my therapist has said, is like, okay, like try and find those holes with
yeah,
and go from there. So,
yeah. So tell me, Jen, um, you said you're hearing voices. What sort of voices do you hear?
um, I hear a variety of voices, but they're all pretty negative depending on the situation that I'm in. I have a lot of anxiety about the people who are important to me. Just I had
Okay.
such a weird upbringing of being kind of a pass around child, and like I never really saw my dad and those kind of things. So I have a lot of anxiety about that. So I have, you know, it's very much a constant battle of having to deal with like 10 or so voices telling you that you're worthless and none of your friends actually like you and they only really hang out with you because of your husband, that kind of thing. Uh, Even though
Mm.
clearly that's not true, because otherwise why would they take you to get therapy? um,
Oh yeah, voices are not true. They're
yeah,
generally 90% of the time they are negative and just nasty little things.
yeah,
So yeah, that's just the way they are. Um, I mean, so what? I mean, what do you think the voices are? hallucinations and that's all it is, or do you think there's something more to it?
Hmm. I go back and forth on that, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, I'm someone who wants to know the answer to everything, because I think that's also part of our logical IT brains is, why is this broken? I'm going to
Yeah.
find out. I don't care if it doesn't need fixed. I'm going to figure it out anyway. That server's not been
Yeah.
used in 10 years. I'm still going to fix it. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I also have a lot of, anxiety, and there's some PTSD from some incidents in my younger days. So that kind of also plays in. Like, I have a pretty irrational fear of tall men. I have a very good
Yeah.
friend who's a tall man, and even though I've known him for years, he's very wonderful. When I'm first around him again after like not seeing him for a couple days, it I'm terrified, and I hide behind our quote unquote dad, because the voices are just so loud and screaming like he's going to hurt you and he's going to do all these things to you. Oh my god, what are you doing? You stupid tart, get out of here. That's the kind of things that like scream in
Mm.
my head. So that kind of also, like,
Okay.
whatever the situation is how, if I'm working, it's because, I'm not good enough for this job. You're just a girl. You shouldn't be doing that, which, obviously it's whatever my situation is how they're going to attack me.
So in a way, it's like a translation of your fears and negative anxieties into voices. If you know what I
Yeah.
mean, it's like what you're feeling at your in your most anxious and in your most negative way, and then that's translated into voices which you can hear. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not. I get obviously it's not a nice thing to experience, um, and I kind of said it before, but one of the worst thing about hearing voices is that you can explain, you can tell someone, but you can't. They can't experience it. They can't experience what you're going through.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's okay. Do you enjoy reading books, Jen?
I do. I don't read as much as I used to, but I do really
Yeah,
enjoy books, and I play a lot. I guess I play a lot of RPGs, which are kind of like books.
yeah. I mean, and not so many people. The reason I asked is a few reasons. One thing, sometimes I know that people with psychotic disorder diagnosis find it difficult to read long periods of text. But sometimes, but there are times when you can read, and it
Yeah,
also can be very helpful. You can read books about your illness or books about you know about topics which can help you. I think, or just fiction books just for escapism. Um, so and also these days, like you say, RPGs, because we have there's so many different types of entertainment that books have get sort of relegated to the dusty old bookshelf in the corner and not used at all. Um,
yeah, which is kind of
so yeah.
sad.
Yes, I guess so. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Like like before, when I was younger, I had zero insight into my diagnosis. But when I read books on it, I think that helped me. They give me that insight, to give me an understanding of what the condition is, and it's like a comfort, and you realize that okay, there's reasons for what I'm feeling. So I
Yeah,
think that's a good thing.
I
So
agree.
yeah, I mean, I just ask another question. Um, do you have any favorite films that portray mental illness?
Um, I I don't watch a ton of movies, because I can't sit still very well without like actively
Okay.
doing something, because that's when things I feel get loud. So I don't watch a lot of films. I mean, I watched Donnie Darko. That was pretty good. Uh,
Yeah.
but no, movie when it comes to movies, I don't have uh the ability to sit and watch, so I don't
Is
tend to.
is that akathisia?
I'm sorry?
Is
Akathisia.
that akathisia, the restlessness caused by the
Oh,
medication?
it might be. I've never been diagnosed with that or anything, but it's just if I sit and do nothing, I know it's going to get loud. I won't be able to distract myself because I still use distraction as a mechanism to ignore like the
Okay.
voices and the things I see out of the corner of my eyes and those kind of things.
So so are you hearing voices like today and now? Is it a daily occurrence happening to you like every day?
It is daily. It's not nearly as bad since I've been on medication. I just have it normally
Yeah.
starts pretty low unless something gets to me and ramps me up and or like I encounter something I'm afraid of or I get an idea in my head and then it just kind of like I try to think of a better word other than katamari because that's not no one's gonna know what that means. But like it grows. Like you're like, okay, I have this idea in my head and now I'm gonna focus on it and everything's gonna get bigger and bigger and louder until I can sort through it and be like, no, you're being irrational.
Okay, what I was going to say is I don't know if you've heard about this, but they did a study on people hearing voices. So in America, in the Western Europe, they were all quite hostile, and they're quite negative, they're quite oppressive. Um, but they did also have a study of voices in the East, like in India, um, and in countries in Asia, and they found that the voices were less harsh, um, they were less negative and more kind of softer. And the theory is that your voices are localized to where you live, and in India, where the country is more spiritual, they have a more spiritual understanding of psychosis, and so therefore there's not such a fear about it. Um, so I think there are more people with psychosis are more accepted in like not maybe not in the establishment in India, but in the common people, I would say. Whereas obviously in Western Europe and America, things are different. We're kind of much more consumer corporate capitalist culture
Yeah.
where we don't accept spirituality. It's not. It's a fringe subject. It's not really something that is in the mainstream. So if we experience something that is out of the normal spectrum, we just get um, I ostracized and stigmatized by that. Do you think that is? What do you think about that?
I think that's insanely fascinating. That's so cool to think about like how this I don't even know if I want to use this word, but I'm terrible with words. I do apologize. I'm gonna say
Yeah.
anomaly like is
Yeah.
manifested here versus in other cultures. Like that's
Mm.
so neat to think about like, okay, this is how it affects me and how it affects someone on the other side of the world is really kind of
Yeah,
yeah.
and also I think there's more to schizophrenia, schizoaffective than meets the eye. Um, it's not just my opinion. It's not just a medical disorder. I think there's more to it than that. Um, I think there's more of a perhaps a spiritual aspect to it. I don't know if you think about that.
I do. I agree with you. There's something else there, but admittedly I don't know what that is. And that's also can be
Yeah.
kind of frustrating because you're like, what else could it be? Especially like seeing it how it
Yeah.
affects those in more spiritual countries. Like, what does that mean kind of thing. So again, it's
Yeah,
it's a
I've
search for
planted the seed
answers,
in
you know
your
what I
head.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have the answer by next week. I don't know, but that's how like the brain works. It kind of like it processes things in the background, and then
Yeah.
and then,
Yeah, you
okay,
kind of like
that's I have.
wake up and
Sorry, carry on.
I was gonna say, like, you'll think about it, like, you leave work and there's a problem brewing in the back of their head, and you make
Yeah,
dinner and you
exactly.
take a
Yeah,
shower, and then you're like
exactly.
slamming your head down on the soap, like, I know what this
Exactly.
is.
Okay. What I want to ask you: have you experienced discrimination?
um, so I would say back home, yes. Back where my family's from, again, uh,
Yeah.
it's not something I talk about very much, but I did try to broach the subject with my mother, and it was a disaster. She's like, "You're being silly. You're being dramatic. This isn't a thing."
Yeah.
You know. So I wouldn't say I'd say I'm pretty protected from the particular group of friends that I have, since they're so very
Yeah. That's good.
they're wonderful. Like they're
That's
very
good.
understanding, and
Yeah.
you can say, "I'm not all right," and they'll be like, "Okay, this not we'll figure it out." Um, so
Mm.
I'm very very fortunate in that way. And in my younger days, uh, I don't remember much from my early 20s because I just was blitzed out of my mind. So I could have been, but it's mostly it's mostly back in that
Yeah.
southern area where there's
Mm.
the the pretenses you have to live it by. Oh.
Okay. Okay. My final question is this: is there anything you would like to to talk about, which I have not asked already? Something which you'd like to bring up, and just like to say to the listeners? Is there anything like that?
Um, I guess as an older person, kind of looking back, the what do you think would be? Let me ask you this question. I'm sorry to like turn it around on you, but maybe you can help me
Yeah,
with this answer.
that's
Is
fine.
what kind of resources do you think would be best for kids in situations kind of like my own, where there's nowhere to reach out to because everyone has the mask? Like, how do you think? Especially, well, nowadays we have the internet too. So, like, what resources would you
Yeah.
recommend for younger listeners who might not know where to turn to for help because they can't tell their parents?
I mean, like I say, the internet is the best thing out there. Um, you can contact people from all around the world, with all different types of experiences. They can, if a younger person, they can contact me on a, from on they can contact me from this podcast, and I'll speak to them, or they can,
Yeah,
there's forums on the internet, mental health forums, where you can speak to people. There's
the the two subreddits are
and
very wonderful.
yeah, I mean, in Reddit, there's lots of communities, like you say, and I mean, there's also, in the UK, we have various helplines, like we have the Samaritans, and we also have Childline as well. So Childline is a support line for children in trouble. I'm not sure if there's one in America, like that, but things like that, that's important for kids to and it's not like, yeah, I think, kids are very, they're very, what's the word, they're kind of, they can take a lot of punishment,
Yeah,
and still be okay, I think, but it doesn't mean they have to. And any strange experiences, I think like it's on TikTok, I follow a person who's got mental health issues, and they're like, 16, 17, and they just express themselves through music, and that's such a great thing to do, is to express yourself through music, for your clothes, or what your hairstyles, and just to get your emotions out. And I think that's so important,
yeah,
because that's kind of, it's kind of like an emotional oppression, if you're feeling that way when you're a child. I think that's the most important thing to do. Just to and it's not all doom and gloom. There's a lot of positivity out there, and it's just about kind of moving into the right direction, I think.
Yeah, I think that's even good for like some of us who are diagnosed older. Like there's communities online and people are so accepting and want to help each other out. So it's really nice that in this day and age, people can get together and do that. I think that makes a huge
Yeah.
difference so that others don't follow in some of the footsteps that us older generation who did not have those at an early age kind of fell into.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I think internet is wonderful in many ways for people with mental health conditions. We really can
Yeah.
have a voice, which we didn't say 20, 30 years ago. We didn't have that voice, so that's fantastic. Okay, Jen, let's wrap it up here. I just want to ask you: is there any particular type of music that you prefer, a genre or a particular type of song? Is there?
So I speak a second language. I speak Japanese.
Yeah.
My grandfather was stationed over there, so growing up, he thought it was important for children to have a second language, and he's like, "This is the one I know, so this is what I'm going to teach you." So I listen to a lot of J-rock to help keep my language skills up because I don't have a lot of people to talk to in Japanese. So I really enjoy that kind of stuff, and it also has that occupation of my mind where I have to sit there and really listen and really like, okay, translate it kind of on the spot.
That's excellent. Okay. I'll see what I can do. I'll see what I can do. I can see if I can find some J rock and play that at the end. So it's been a real pleasure to speak with you, Jen. Really nice to talk with. I
Thank you.
hope you enjoyed being interviewed by me, and hopefully we will speak again. I do have plans to try and bring people back kind of in the next year or so, maybe to have some sort of one-on-one or group discussions about various topics, I think, or just to find out how people are getting on. So yeah, thank you very much.
No, thank you, and thank you for doing this.
That's absolutely fine. My pleasure.